The Jason Rigdon Show is recorded in Seattle, Washington in front of a live studio audience of indifferent but cute cats. You can support this podcast by giving us a rating and review on iTunes, sharing this episode on social media, or just by telling a friend about the show. You can also support the show financially on Patreon. Just visit patreon.com/Jason Rigdon.
I'm Ratttz. I work as an electronic music producer. I am classically trained. I've been doing this for a number of years now. I have a record coming out called Bad Breaks. It'll be out October 2nd, a week from today. And today I'm here mostly to talk to you about how to stay creative in this moment. Like, the world is low-key on fire. Like, it's a little bit on fire. And also how to communicate to people who share nothing with you. You know, so I am a non-binary transgender furry. And when people hear that, they're like, excuse me, what is, I don't know how to collapse that into a thing that I conveniently know. Like, those aren't words that communicate like what your deal is to me. And so, you know, when you're confronted with something like that, the best way is to find a structure, right? And it's similar when working in music. You know, you have an audience. Most Americans don't know anything about music. If you ask them, you know, the difference between a major and a minor chord, they might feed you something like, oh, this is happy or this is sad or something along those lines. But they don't have any firm grasp. So what you have to do is you discover a structure that guides them through your work. And so in music, we call this entrainment, where you have a steady pulse, you get your head bobbing, right? You're able to follow along, and then I feed you a hook. And this is usually a melody that you can sing to yourself, that you're going to remember, that you will end the tune and you'll walk away and you'll be like, oh, I heard something today. You know, whereas normally everything else in your life is like a chaotic blur, right? Like I'm sure you like, yeah. No, seriously. So, yeah.
Especially right now.
No, have like open up Twitter and read something, and like I dare you to remember what happened 3 days ago, because it doesn't possess a structure, right? It's just nonstop wall-to-wall suffering. And my goal as an artist is to give you a reason to live. And I do that by providing you with just the most basic structure, which is literally just a steady pulse, a tune you can hum, and ideally, like, you might have like, I have a phrase here, it goes for 16 bars, and then, okay, we'll move on to the next one, another 16 bars of a fresh idea, something that has a little bit change in contrast, right? So, Jason, I actually have not listened to your show yet. So
it's okay. Nobody does.
Nobody does. Nobody does. And I am, you know, just dying to know. I seem to remember. So I had seen various parts of Seattle Talks before.
Oh, yeah.
And I had originally heard of you through Seattle Sucks.
Yeah.
Actually. I was a big fan of their interview that they did with Charles Mudede.
Mm-hmm.
Actually.
That was great. Yeah.
Yeah. No, he's fantastic. Because generally when I'm hanging around, so I am, spoiler alert, I'm broke. I managed to live in the city, and I don't earn any money. And I feel totally disconnected from the reality of the people who live here, because I work alongside this music stuff. You know, I've been working in freight and engineering and labor for probably the past 10 years, and not software engineering, hardware, audio engineering. And I don't, I literally don't understand how other people survive here. Like I don't even know in this moment. The median income is something like $100,000, and I think so far for this year I've probably banked about 4.
Yeah, I know living here is like this thing where you just see your friends leave because they can't afford to stay here. And then you like look around now, I'm in my 40s now and I look and like, well, oh yeah, all my friends are all over the country and there's not really the same community that when I was younger. And that, I feel like right now with this terrible time, that's been really rough on me personally, just because you're like, gosh, we're so far away.
Yeah. I've been, what I've been doing to bridge that is, so like the music scene is sort of similar in the sense that we're all sort of scattered to all these different urban areas. COVID has absolutely obliterated our means of making money. So I had a tour for this booked for the spring, and then I was going to do some shows in the fall, and COVID absolutely destroyed that. And so what we've been doing is we gather in these virtual spaces to still spin, like we still DJ and stuff like that. I hang out in a website called Data Fruits. It's a big internet radio station hosted here in Seattle and Seoul. Nice. And it's just wall-to-wall electronic music. And every so often, about every 2 weeks, we all pile into a Discord. And then over the course of 2 hours, we write tunes from samples gathered from Twitter, from YouTube, and from all these places. And, that has been the most nourishing thing in this moment, is just earnestly reaching out to other people and finding community activities that you can still do with other people. Like they don't have to be like total strangers or anything like that, but you do need to reach out and be your most authentic person to somebody, like not on a daily basis, but somebody that isn't just in your household.
Yeah.
And I feel so much better after doing that. It really just makes me feel whole again. And I feel like a lot of people are probably missing that right now, given that they can't even leave the house.
For me, like when this lockdown, I think first started, I started a couple D&D groups to get people to come and play. And like, it's been kind of interesting to have some people that have been playing for years and one group like forever. And then I've got like a Sunday group and, I think most of the players are brand new. This is the first time ever playing a role-playing game. Yeah. It's been fun seeing that kind of, now it's been so long that they're the learning curve where they're actually good at it. They know they're feeling comfortable with it. And getting more into kind of like, I think having like a ritual is pretty good too during this time period. We're like, on this day I do this, at this time I do this. Kind of like anchors you a little bit.
I've actually, believe it or not, in spite of being a massive nerd, I have never played D&D. Can you believe that?
Yeah, I highly recommend it. It's a really nice, like, complete escape where you're like just hobbits and dwarves and dragons and just away from it all.
Sure. I think I've picked up the book. I've picked up the player's handbook at least once at some friend's house, and I remember looking at it, and they describe like, I don't know, maybe 5 minutes of play. And I literally can't even picture that in my head. I'm just like I'm familiar with role play as a thing, right? I am that weird. I know what that is. But the additional layer of the rules and the dice is a little bit alien to me.
Yeah.
And I think, I should probably just listen to Critical Role at least once in my life, and that'll probably clarify it pretty quickly, huh?
Yeah, and one thing that we've seen quite a bit of is like some people are a little disappointed with their actual experiences because they watch or listen to these kind of usually professional actors, voice actors doing it. And like, your group of friends you're not professional.
They're not. They don't have the witty repartee, and they can't necessarily think of what comes next.
Yeah. But there's an interesting thing of like helping each other along. One person starts doing a little bit of a voice, gets a little more confident, and then somebody else starts using just the mildest little accent. You're like, I hear that. I know. Good job.
Yeah.
So it's been quite an experience. So I think like a lot of us have found like these like little islands of socializing, I guess, and escapism. Because I imagine the music is the same way, where you're probably not making music about what's happening right now. Maybe you are, but it's also an escape.
Yeah, I would say it varies. So, my last record featured some items that I was particularly anxious about. I had spent a decent amount of time in the street protesting, and like that really stuck with me. But we do spend some time escaping, mostly because like normally when you think of like we're sort of missing the sort of unreality of the club, right? So like normally when you step into a proper club, you know, you can sort of feel like the conventional rules of reality just sort of like oozing away, and suddenly it's all flashing lights and noise and, you know, humming energy and vibrating bodies, and you're like, finally I've managed to free myself from one meat dimension into a whole new meat dimension, and we just don't really have that. So what we've seen is we've seen these sort of new, I'm briefly going to describe the current performance scene. So right now we have a bunch of different flavors of, my computer's doing a thing. We have a couple different flavors of performance where I've seen people throwing virtual parties in Minecraft. That's the big one. So I've seen, was it Thunderhawk Records? I've seen Mr. Bill perform in Minecraft. I've seen, whoever Virtual Riot is signed to, they've done another Minecraft thing. I've seen Roblox. People are urgently reaching out into these 3D spaces in order to project themselves into literally anywhere else other than their bedroom. Because it's not, for them, it's not just about consuming the music, right? It's about expressing themselves in a social space. It's about a temporary reprieve from, you know, the standard mode of behavior. And my Data Fruits is a little bit interesting in the sense that it's mostly just a chat, but they also project like nonsense video in the background, and you know, they host the sample flip challenge that Eat This has been putting on for us, and that is still just deeply nourishing. And also, you know, the DJs come from around the world, so you get to hear a lot of tunes that you weren't expecting. We're seeing in all of these online spaces sort of a blending of all sorts of different styles, because we're no longer in a sense we're all sealed away into our bedrooms, right? But in another sense, all these sort of different scenes have gotten plugged in together again, because you have a bunch of people who have, you know, an endless amount of time and who are urgently reaching out for any other, you know, socially maladjusted weirdos to play their music against each other. So now we're seeing a lot more, like Chicago footwork is getting crazy popular. You'd never hear it. You wouldn't even know what it was unless you had bumped into one of these spaces, because it, prior to this moment, it didn't exist outside of Chicago, right? It didn't exist outside of the Midwest scene, and now it's suddenly everywhere. So COVID has sort of changed a lot in terms of what music is getting written, how we're consuming it, you know, and the kinds of people who show up. You know, it's a little bit, a lot of shows prior to now, you know, they sustain themselves off of liquor sales. But all of these events are now all ages. So we have a bunch of Zoomer kids who are showing up to the drum and bass show, and you're like, how did you get in? Like, I know that you're a big Roblox fan, but this is supposed to be I guess you're just going to enjoy the bass music for now, you know.
How are people discovering these things? Like, how's this networking kind of working? Because, back in the day, it would be flyers and stuff, but you wouldn't really be doing this for a virtual event. It's like distributed. So the way that things are working right now is that people find events mostly through a combination of Facebook and Twitter is the common venues. But what is happening is you're sort of getting a splintering of the scene where you have these big record labels who are able to afford algorithmic promotion. Okay.
Right? So they're able to spend money to get Twitter or Facebook to promote their post, and then people all pile into these servers to go enjoy this music. And when they're not promoting their posts directly, they also create these alternative media landscapes where they can promote their music. So these management companies manage and maintain blogs that write about the music that they had already signed, right? As if they're a completely different entity. And you look at the big one that's going on right now is actually Spotify.
Okay.
So Spotify, the way that Spotify presents its music to audiences is not too unlike YouTube's algorithmic automatic playlist suggestion system. So people have been gaming Spotify by changing their titles of all their songs into keywords. So like baby, sleep, thunderstorm, rain.
Yeah.
It will be the title of your song. And it is, 30 minutes of rain sounds, right? And so Spotify got flooded with this. They also got flooded with a lot of lo-fi hip-hop, which I won't diss. There's some on my record too, so it's just but what Spotify did in order to combat this, and this is really funny, is that rather than simply rewrite the algorithm or figure it out or whatever, they just created their own fake artists. They created their own keyword bots.
Okay.
And then created corporate playlists that sponsored their own fake artists.
Okay.
And because of the way, this gets even deeper. This is a yarn that has multiple layers. Because the way that Spotify pays people is as a percentage of total plays. So if their corporate owned music gets more plays, then they pay out less to the record labels who actually provide them with real music.
Yeah.
And when they're actually, a lot of the times they're actually not even paying them. They actually pay them with equity in Spotify, which then increases the stock price of Spotify.
Wow.
Which then gives them more fake money to then give you. It's really like, so this is actually old news. This has been ongoing since a little bit before COVID started, but it's been getting worse. It's been getting worse because Spotify doesn't have any incentive here, and there's no adult in the room who's just going to step in and be like, this is the issue. But in the meantime, while all this is happening, everybody and their friends are now gathering into smaller and smaller private net labels because they need to organize events on Minecraft, they need to organize events on Roblox, they need to organize events on Twitch. Twitch is a big one. Who's actually fairly popular on Twitch right now is Kenny Beats. Kenny Beats is a hip hop producer who has been basically streaming nonstop since the beginning of COVID.
Okay.
And he is, I think, mostly rap and trap producing. He does some pop tunes as well. And this guy is great, first of all, in the sense that he is literally just a caveman. Like, I totally expect that he enters notes by just like punching his keyboard repeatedly. But we've seen this sort of, I want to say, like, socialization of music work, where, you know, I live a pretty boring quasi data entry like life, where I'm just sitting here slicing samples into the playlist editor, but there's nothing stopping me from having strangers watch me while I do it, you know? And as a consequence, the art of making the music, the art of socializing, is now getting folded into an all-in-one sort of digital experience that, you know, you can build new communities out of. And it really is the reaching out to other people that makes it valuable, because that's what we need right now. You know, like, we just need other people. And until social distancing lifts, until, you know, things improve, you know, the clubs might not even be there when we get back. They're closing. And I suspect that the land prices continue to rise, at least here in Seattle. So I suspect that they won't be able to afford to come back. The landlords won't let them come back. So this might be the new normal. Yeah,
it's a whole new world out there with what the post-COVID world looks like, especially here in Seattle. I mean, so many businesses are closing. It just feels like it's going to be, once we get out of this, it's going to be so much more corporate. Like, and whatever kind of weirdness or interesting stuff, it's just going to be lowered and lowered and lowered. And it's really a sad thing to see.
Yeah. But in the meantime, you know, we're all hustling as hard as we can. I received, so prior to, this is funny, so roughly the second week in March, this past year, I was like, I'm done. I'm just going to, I saved up, you know, a couple grand, and I was just like, I'm just going to live off of this and try and launch my business, you know. And I have shows booked. I'm ready. I'm just going to go. And then they're like, there's this virus coming around. Like, it might be kind of bad. It might be a real deal. And I'm like, all right, well, like, that'll be fine. But, like, my show's not until May. So, like, you know, it'll be fine. And then it totally, it totally took over. Now I'm like, oh, well, I guess I'm glad that I have a job that I do in my bedroom, ? Like I suppose it has kept me safe in a sense, and it has made me available to participate in ongoing demonstrations in the street, I suppose. But it's been challenging. It really has been. But the response I get from people when I meet them online has been really, really overwhelming. Like, people are truly, truly, truly hungry to just see anyone. And, you know, I remember I was told as, like, an online etiquette thing that you probably shouldn't talk to strangers unless you're willing to talk to somebody on the bus, right? Okay. If you wouldn't say something to somebody on the bus, you know, if you wouldn't disturb somebody, get them to take their headphones off and then say something to them, and they wouldn't smile because you said something weird or creepy or awful, you know, then don't say it.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of us have sort of internalized that and stopped reaching out and stopped being authentic. And as a consequence, like, a lot of these spaces have sort of hollowed out a little bit. And I really want to encourage people to not let that happen to them.
Yeah.
That you should go ahead and be free and be strange and be as honest as you can be. And people are excited to meet you. You know, I was excited to come here and talk to you today, because I earnestly believe that you would give me a fair shake, and I earnestly believe that your listeners will enjoy hearing from me.
Yeah.
Even though, like, I'm a little bit colorful. So, I just totally lost my train of thought.
No, okay. Can I ask you, during this time period, one thing that a lot of creative folks have been struggling with, and even, I mean, what I do is not all that creative, I don't know, whatever.
Sure.
It's just how to maintain that, like, the momentum. Like, on some days, I just feel like a rock, and I just cannot move.
So there's two different methods, and I love and I hate both of them. The first one is actually the Jerry Seinfeld method. So Jerry has as far as comedians go, he probably generates the most bits per second out of most comedians that I know of. And his method is that he literally has a calendar, and every day that he works on his craft, he checks the day off. And he's like, my goal is to fill up as many calendars with as many consecutive X's as I can. And every time I get away from that, the first time I stop working on it, you can feel that momentum slipping. I dislike this because it doesn't really, it's not that you shouldn't work every day, which you should, I think, but he doesn't necessarily give you a methodology. It's sort of loose on the details. It's slippery. The other method that I hear is that you work every day, but you decide you have a task list of tasks from least intense to most intense. So that way, when you sit down at your desk, right, you have something that you can use to keep your momentum going without necessarily having to commit to being your most creative person in that moment. Right. And, for me, I sort of have to generate like a whole new idea, like every single time I sit down. It's not necessarily that there aren't like canned ideas that I can just drop in, but when you're thinking about a hook, think about how many times you just snap your fingers and then just be like, spit me out a hook. It's not really as simple as you might think. And so for that sort of thing, what I typically think of is try and invent some rules. And if the rule works for you, keep it. And if the rule doesn't work for you, throw it away. And so for me, what I do is I think of a hook, right? And it'll be like, and it usually is something that is a nice, easy, even number. And so if it lands across 2 or 4 bars, then I know I'm golden. Why? Because I can immediately write a variation on that hook that'll be the answer to that hook. And then I can immediately duplicate that entire pattern over and then craft a variation that answers the previous 2 copies. And then by doing that, you can sort of naturally expand out the hook in both directions at the same time. And that allows you to work efficiently. It allows you to think of the project more holistically. It allows you to keep moving forward. And every second that you spend staring at a blank page, you can sort of feel like your energy and your mood just being pulled out of your eyeballs. And so you just need to be able to cast that. It really is just the first thing you put down. You just need to get it out of you. Once you make your first decision, it's much easier to make your next decision. And once you keep on making those decisions, the project finishes itself. So make decisions. Find a way to make each decision more valuable as you move forward. So in my case, it's duplicate and variate, right? Variate, variegate, vary, just vary. Variegate is a word, but it doesn't mean that, unfortunately. I'm sorry, but you're going to make each decision more valuable as you move forward, because each decision that you make creates new assumptions about the next part that follows your previous decision. And that allows you to finish the task, finish the deliverable a little bit quicker than if you just assume that every single decision that you make is just somehow unconnected or atomized. Mm-hmm. You know, they all have to relate to one another. And so if you think of them as variations or as connected in that way, I think you'll be able to move forward in a more straightforward way. Did you have any questions specifically about my business or about like the way that I work?
Yeah, I mean, I think you kind of alluded to a little bit of it. You said you had some new music coming out.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So how does that work for you? Because you're an electronic musician, so it's a little bit different than what we think of
yes,
bands,
Yeah. So basically, the way that I might set out and start writing a tune, especially for a project like this. So Bad Breaks is a bunch of music derived from break beats. So that is all sorts of music like breakcore. So you ever listen to like Aphex Twin or Square Pusher or something like that? I've been listening to a lot of Footwork, so there is a Footwork tune on there. And also lo-fi hip hop. All of these things have syncopated kick rhythms as well as snare patterns. And so basically I will write a couple drum patterns. I will then think about how to structure the tune into larger units, like 16 or 32 bar patterns. And then I think about how to structure licks and hummable tunes that I can then put in there. And then from there, you're now thinking about things that might draw interest. So electronic music's a little bit different than, you might listen to rock or something like that. A lot of the music, there's no voice, there's no vocal takes. So you have to generate interest by what is the most interesting bleep or bloop or scratch or white noise that you can make a computer do that sounds like you're making a laptop do backflips. You need to find ways of doing that. And so what I do is I actually look at these patterns and then I start ripping chunks out of them. And I rip chunks and then I fill it full of as many laptop backflips as I can in order to make it seem as though there is like this sort of effortless energy, this effortless possibility that sort of exists alongside a simple ditty, and that's how you maintain interest without a vocal, is that you literally just have to have nonstop ideas, which is easy for me because I have ADD. But for the rest of you suckers, what a lot of people these days will do is they will have a samples folder, which is sort of like, if you can imagine, like you sit in front of the computer and you just sit there and you generate guitar licks or whatever, and then you can literally just copy and paste them directly into your project and then cut them into pieces. This is sort of like that, but on a level that I don't think most people are able to hold in their head. Like sometimes I operate on slices of time in milliseconds. Like I will cut that deeply, duplicate, and pitch bend and all this in order to create some truly strange noises. But it keeps people entertained. It really, the look on some people's faces when they hear some of these things is kind of priceless, because they're like, I don't know how you did that. And I'm like, I don't know either. I just, hyper focused a little bit too long, and eventually these breaks fell out. And that's basically all there is to it. I mean, it's a lot of dry and technical stuff sometimes. I don't really want to get into explaining how compression works to you. Periodically, my wife is a producer. Her desk is directly behind mine. And periodically we'll have like a shouting match about stereo imaging, which is like how a sound might move across the stereo field. So be like, this thing keeps on bonking me in the nose and I want you to stop it. I'll be like, I don't know if mono is bonking you in the nose or not. She's like, it's not mono. It's because it literally sits on the edge and then in the middle at the same time. Like, please fix this. I'm like, I can't. I won't and I can't. We have an interesting domestic relationship. But.
We're just about out of time. So when your album is coming out, when and where can people find it?
It is coming out October 2nd, and you'll be able to see Bad Breaks on Bandcamp, Rat's Nest, RATTZNEST.bandcamp.com. You will see it is the newest album out October 2nd. And I'm really excited for everyone to hear it. And it was such a pleasure for you to have me on your show. Jason, is there anything you want to ask me before we head out of here?
No, I was just actually going to ask you if there's anything else you want to touch on before we go to the people listening or watching. It was a great, I feel like the time flew by, so that was fantastic.
You know what? I was sweating originally when like only 5 minutes passed, and I was like, oh no, I'm dying. And then 25 more minutes passed. I'm like, oh, where'd it go? I really have had a lovely time, and I look forward to hearing the show.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it.
You've been listening to The Jason Rigdon Show. More information and links for our guests are in the show notes. For more information about this show, visit jasonrigdon.com. If you have any questions, comments, or suggestions, email jasonrigdon@gmail.com or leave a voicemail at 425-835-2766. Our theme music is Bush Week by Nihilor and used under the Creative Commons Attribution License. This episode is copyrighted by Jason Rigdon in 2020 and is freely available under the Creative Commons Attribution Share Alike license. Thanks for listening and have a great day.